The celebration lights filled the sky above Seoul as fireworks exploded in patterns that spelled out messages of hope and unity. Earth was finally becoming a full member of the Galactic Council after 73 years of probationary status. Ambassador Dongwon stood in the Grand Chamber on Vakara Prime, the capital world of the Council, watching as representatives from 12 ancient species applauded his speech. His heart swelled with pride. Humanity had made it. They were no longer the young species struggling to find their place among the stars. Commander Ji-hoon Park watched the same ceremony from his station on Luna, Earth's moon. The military base hummed with activity as soldiers celebrated. Ji-hoon allowed himself a rare smile. He had fought in the border wars against pirates and defended human colonies from raiders. Now, perhaps, there would be real peace. His terminal beeped with a priority message. He assumed it was another congratulatory note from Earth Command. It was not. The message contained a single word in red text: lockdown. Before Ji-hoon could react, every system in the lunar base went dark. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in blood-red shadows. Ji-hoon rushed to the command center where panicked officers were trying to restart the systems. Nothing responded. The quantum-locked security protocols that protected Earth's military had activated, but they were locking the humans out instead of protecting them. On Vakara Prime, Ambassador Dongwon's smile faded as he noticed the shift in the chamber. The 12 council members rose from their seats, and their expressions changed from friendly to cold. The eldest among them, a towering Vakari with silver skin and 3 eyes, spoke in a voice that echoed through translation devices. The human delegation will remain where they stand. By ancient law and council decree, Earth is hereby designated a resource world. Your species will serve the greater galactic community through labor and service. Resistance will be met with immediate termination. Dongwon felt his blood turn to ice. Around him, security fields snapped into place, trapping the human delegation in shimmering cages of energy. He tried to speak, to protest, but his voice would not work. The translator, implant in his neck, had been remotely disabled. Dr. Myung-han was in her research station, orbiting Mars, when the invasion began. She had been studying alien biology, working alongside scientists from 4 different species. She trusted them. She considered them friends. When the alarms blared and she looked out the viewport, she saw them turning on the human crew members. Stun weapons appeared from hidden compartments. Her colleagues moved with practiced efficiency, as if they had rehearsed this many times. Myung ran. She was not a soldier, but her survival instincts kicked in. She sealed herself in the sample storage bay and activated the emergency broadcast system. Her message went out to every human frequency she could reach. This is Dr. Han, on Research Station Olympus. We are under attack. The Council species are hostile. I repeat, the Council has betrayed us. This is not a drill. The invasion fleet appeared in Earth's orbit 12 minutes later. Hundreds of massive ships materialized from quantum jumps, surrounding the planet in a perfect grid. Captain Haejin Choi was commanding the EDF warship Indomitable during a routine patrol near Jupiter when she received the emergency signals. She immediately turned her ship toward Earth, but her navigation officer stopped her with a trembling hand. Captain, look at the scanner. There are too many. We would not last 30 seconds. Haejin stared at the display. Her ship was small, a patrol cruiser with light weapons. The Council fleet consisted of dreadnoughts and carriers, each one capable of destroying entire cities. She made a decision that tore at her heart. Download all military databases to isolated storage. Wipe our main systems and prepare for emergency jump. We are going dark. Scheme. Wipe. Wipe. Her crew protested. Some shouted about duty and honor. Haejin silenced them with a look that could cut steel. If we die here, we die for nothing. If we survive, we can fight back. Choose now. The Indomitable vanished into deep space moments before Council fighters would have detected it. Haejin watched Earth shrink in the rear display, knowing she was abandoning her homeworld. Tears ran down her face, but her hands remained steady on the controls. On Earth, the surrender came within 48 hours. The Council had planned perfectly. Every defense satellite was locked down. Every military base was isolated. Nuclear weapons would not launch. Conventional armies found their vehicles disabled and their communications jammed. The Council broadcasters appeared on every screen across the planet, explaining the new reality in calm, reasonable voices. Humanity was not being destroyed. They were being elevated to their true purpose. Humans would work in the mines of distant asteroids, in the factories of industrial worlds, in the farms that fed the Council species. It was an honor to serve. Resistance would only bring suffering. Compliance would bring peace. Ji-hoon watched from a hidden cave in the mountains of Korea. He had escaped the lunar base with 15 soldiers, stealing a small shuttle during the confusion. They crashed in the wilderness and had been moving on foot for 2 days. Around a small fire, they listened to the surrender speeches from Earth's governments. One by one, every nation capitulated. What choice did they have? "We fight anyway," Ji-hoon said quietly. His soldiers looked at him with hollow eyes. "I know what you are thinking. You think it is hopeless. You think we cannot win against 12 civilizations that have traveled the stars for thousands of years. You might be right. There's not calm." He stood up, his shadow long against the cave wall. "But I would rather die fighting than live as a slave. And I think there are others who feel the same way. We find them. We organize. We learn. And when the time comes, we make them regret ever hearing the name Earth." On Vakara Prime, Ambassador Dongwon sat in a cell designed for humans. It was comfortable by prison standards. The Council was not needlessly cruel, he realized. They simply saw humans as resources, not as equals. He had spent decades believing in galactic unity and friendship. That dream died in the Council chamber, but something else was born in its place. Dongwon began to pay attention to his guards' routines. He watched the patterns of their patrols. He listened to their conversations when they thought he could not understand their language. His translator was disabled, but his mind was not. He began to learn. Across the galaxy, in 40 different star systems where humans had been stationed or living, the same pattern repeated. Capture, imprisonment, processing. The Council had done this before to other species. They had a system, perfected over millennia. They knew how to break a civilization's will to resist. What they did not know was that humanity had spent its entire history fighting impossible odds. Every human culture had stories of the underdog who refused to stay down. Every human child learned that the biggest opponent could fall if you hit them in the right place. The Council had made their first mistake. They let humans live. In the months to come, they would learn exactly what that mistake would cost them. 6 months had changed everything. The cities of Earth looked the same from orbit. But on the ground, they had become processing centers. Humans lined up in the thousands every day, waiting to be scanned, cataloged, and fitted with control implants. The small devices were inserted at the base of the skull. They were supposed to make humans obedient and compliant. The Council had used them on 40 other species with perfect success. Mi-young stood in line at a Talux bioengineering facility in what used to be Tokyo. She had been captured 3 weeks after her initial escape. Now she wore the gray uniform of a labor worker, and a fresh implant scar marked her neck. But something was wrong with her implant. She could feel it trying to suppress her thoughts, trying to make her accept her situation. But her mind pushed back. It hurt like ice water in her brain, but she could resist. Around her, other humans shuffled forward with blank expressions. Most of them had stopped fighting the implants. It was easier to let go, to accept the peaceful numbness. Mi-young wanted to scream at them to wake up, but she kept her face neutral. The Taluk's overseers could not know that some humans were immune to their control. She was assigned to work in the genetics lab, analyzing alien DNA samples. The Taluks thought humans made good lab assistants because of their clever hands and pattern recognition. They did not watch her closely. Why would they? The implant should make her loyal. Myung used this freedom to study everything she could about their technology. She memorized security codes. She mapped the facility layout. And most importantly, she began to understand how the implants worked. In the mountains of Korea, Ji-hoon's resistance cell had grown from 15 soldiers to over 200 fighters. They moved between caves and abandoned buildings, always staying one step ahead of Vakari patrols. Food was scarce and ammunition scarcer. But they were learning to fight smart instead of hard. Ji-hoon studied the enemy. The Vakari war priests were fearsome warriors, but they fought with honor and tradition. They announced their attacks. They never struck at night. They believed in fair combat. Ji-hoon had no such beliefs. War was not about honor. It was about winning. His cell ambushed a Vakari supply convoy on a mountain road, using rocks and gravity instead of weapons they did not have. The convoy vehicles tumbled into the ravine. Ji-hoon's people salvaged everything: food, equipment, and most valuable of all, communication devices. Now, they could listen to the enemy's broadcasts. That was how Ji-hoon learned about other resistance cells. They were everywhere. In the ruins of New York, fighters attacked processing centers and freed captives. In the Australian outback, saboteurs destroyed alien mining equipment. In the Amazon, entire communities had vanished into the jungle, beyond the Council's reach. Humanity was not broken. It was angry. Jaewon had been a systems engineer before the invasion. He had helped design some of Earth's quantum security protocols. Now he worked in secret, hidden in the basement of a destroyed university in Seoul. A woman named Soo-jin had found him and brought him into the resistance network. She was a smuggler who knew every secret path through the occupied city. Jaewon worked with salvaged alien technology that Soo-jin's network provided. He took apart Vakari communicators, Taluk's medical scanners, and Breshik industrial tools. Slowly, piece by piece, he began to understand the quantum lock system that had disabled Earth's defenses. It was brilliant and terrible. The Council had used humanity's own security against them, but every lock had a key. Jaewon found evidence of a master control node, somewhere on Vakara Prime. If someone could reach it and input the right commands, they could free Earth's military systems all at once. It seemed impossible. Vakara Prime was on the other side of the galaxy, heavily defended, and no human had a ship that could make the journey. Impossible just means no one has done it yet, Soo-jin said when Jaewon shared his findings. She sent the information through her network to every resistance cell she could contact. Somewhere, someone might know what to do with it. Mi-young made her discovery in the 3rd month of her captivity. She had been studying brain scans of humans with implants, comparing them to scans of other enslaved species. The difference was subtle, but significant. Human neural pathways were more complex and more adaptable. The implants were designed for simpler minds. They could not fully control a human brain without causing damage. That was why some humans could resist. Their minds literally fought back against the programming. Mi-young began to document the mental techniques that worked best. Focus on specific memories. Practice meditation. Feel the implant's signals and consciously reject them. It was like fighting an invisible weight pressing down on your thoughts. She shared her research through carefully coded messages hidden in lab reports. The information spread through the resistance networks. A psychologist named Minho picked up her research and expanded it into a training program. Thousands of enslaved humans across dozens of worlds began practicing the techniques. The implants started failing. The Council noticed. Reports came in from mining colonies and factory worlds. Human workers were becoming defiant. Production quotas were missed. Equipment was sabotaged. Overseers were attacked. The Breshik administrators could not understand it. The implants were supposed to be perfect. The council convened emergency sessions. They debated solutions. The Vakari war priests proposed a demonstration of power. Choose one resistance cell and destroy it completely. Broadcast the execution across Earth. Show the humans what happened to those who fought back. They chose Jehun's mountain base. Intelligence reports suggested it was a major coordination center for the Korean resistance. The Vakari sent 3 of their war priests, each a veteran of 100 battles. They brought 40 elite soldiers and enough firepower to level the entire mountain. Jehun received warning of the attack from Sujin's network. He had 12 hours to prepare. He could have run, disappeared into the wilderness again. His officers suggested retreat, but Jehun saw an opportunity. The Vakari were coming to teach humans a lesson about fear. He decided to teach them a different lesson. The mountain base was in a narrow valley with steep slopes on both sides. Jehun positioned his fighters on the high ground with improvised weapons. They had explosives made from mining supplies, crossbows made from construction materials, and a few precious alien energy rifles taken from earlier ambushes. It was not much, but the terrain was theirs. The Vakari came at dawn. As predicted, they announced their presence with a declaration of judgment, broadcasting on all frequencies. Jehun let them enter the valley. Let them feel confident. Let them think this would be easy. The avalanche came first. Months of preparation, carefully placed charges, all triggered at once. Tons of rock and ice crashed down on the Vakari column. Vehicles were crushed. Soldiers were buried. The war priests survived, protected by personal shields, but they were separated from their troops. Jehun's fighters attacked from above. They did not try to fight fair. They shot from cover and retreated. They triggered traps and let the mountain do the killing. The Vakari war priests were powerful warriors in open combat. But this was not open combat. This was ambush and murder and desperation. By sunset, 3 Vakari war priests were dead. It cost Jehun 38 fighters, but they had done something the galaxy thought impossible. They had killed the Council's elite warriors using primitive weapons and tactics. The battle was recorded by drones and broadcast by the resistance. The footage spread across every human network, and many alien ones too. The galaxy watched humans, supposedly broken and enslaved, defeating warriors who had not lost a battle in 3,000 years. The message was clear. Humans could be beaten. Humans could be captured and fitted with control implants. But humans could not be made to quit. Push them down, and they would rise up angrier than before. In her lab cell on the Talux facility, Mi-young watched the footage of Jehun's victory. She did not know him personally, but she felt connected to him and to every human fighting back. Her research had helped others resist the implants. Now she needed to escape and share everything she had learned. That night, she made her move. The implants screamed in her head as she broke a dozen behavioral protocols. She ignored the pain. Pain was temporary. Freedom was what mattered. She made it to the communications room and sent out a compressed data burst containing all her research before the alarms could stop her. Security forces found her, but the damage was done. Every resistance cell on Earth and beyond now had the information they needed. The implants could be beaten. Humans could not be enslaved. Not really. Not permanently. The Council faced a truth they had never encountered before. For the first time in millennia, a species was fighting back effectively. The careful system of control was breaking down, and the worst part was that humans were getting stronger, not weaker. 18 months after the invasion, Earth was divided into zones. The Council occupied the major cities and industrial centers. The resistance controlled the wilderness, the underground, and the spaces in between. It was a cold war that grew hotter every day. In orbit, Council warships maintained a blockade, but they had to pull ships away to deal with problems on other worlds. Humans were causing trouble everywhere. Captain Heijin returned from the darkness between stars. She had been gone for 14 months, and she did not return alone. Behind her damaged patrol cruiser came 37 ships of various designs. They were old vessels, scarred by ancient battles, but they were functional and armed. More importantly, they were crewed by allies humanity did not know existed. Admiral Wu Jin, who now commanded Earth's scattered military forces from a hidden base in Antarctica, stared at the approaching fleet in disbelief. He opened communications with Heijin, half expecting some kind of trap. "Report, Captain." "What am I looking at?" Heijin's face appeared on the screen, older and harder than when she had fled Earth. "Sir, I found something the Council has been hiding. An old enemy they thought they had destroyed. The remnants." The story Heijin told seemed impossible. She had followed old star charts into regions marked as forbidden. There, in the dark spaces where no one traveled, she found them. The remnants were not biological beings. They were artificial constructs, ancient war machines built by a civilization that had fought the Council 10,000 years ago. That civilization was gone, erased from history by the Council's judgment. But their machines survived. The remnants had been hiding, waiting, learning. When Heijin stumbled into their territory, they scanned her ship and found something interesting. Humans were at war with the Council too. The enemy of my enemy, as the old saying went, becomes a friend. The remnants gave Heijin something precious: knowledge. They shared weapon designs that could penetrate Council shields. They provided star charts showing weak points in Council defenses. Most valuable of all, they gave humanity hope that the Council could be beaten. Admiral Wu Jin listened to everything and made a decision. Earth needed weapons, and they needed them fast. He activated a protocol that had been in development since the early days of resistance. Operation Iron Forge. Across Earth, in places the Council could not easily reach, construction began. Underwater cities in the deep oceans became weapons factories. Mountain caverns were transformed into shipyards. Humans worked around the clock, building an arsenal in secret. They could not match the Council's technology directly, but with remnant designs, they could create weapons that would work. Mi-young had escaped the Talux facility with help from Su-jin's smuggling network. Now, she worked in one of the hidden laboratories, studying both human and alien technology. Jae-won worked alongside her, combining her biological knowledge with his engineering expertise. Together, they made breakthroughs. The control implants were fully decoded now. Mi-young and Minho had developed a training program that spread through the resistance networks. Humans across 40 worlds were breaking free from mental control. But Mi-young wanted more. She wanted to turn the implants into weapons. She created a signal that could be broadcast through Council communication networks. It would not affect aliens, but any human with an implant would hear it. The signal would break the conditioning completely and instantly. Millions of enslaved humans could be freed with a single transmission. They just needed access to the right transmitter. Jae-won had his own breakthrough. He had been studying the quantum lock system for months, taking apart every piece of Council technology he could find. Finally, he understood it completely. The master control node was indeed on Vakura Prime, buried deep under the Council's main chamber. If someone could reach it and input a 47-character override code, every quantum lock on every human system across the galaxy would deactivate simultaneously. Earth's weapons would come back online. Ships, missiles, defense satellites, everything. It would take seconds to input the code, but reaching Vakura Prime seemed impossible. The throne world was on the other side of the galaxy, protected by multiple fleets and planetary shields. "We will find a way," Admiral Wu Jin said when he heard the report. "Nothing is impossible if you are willing to pay the price." The price was becoming clear. Intelligence reports from Su-jin's network indicated that the Council was planning something drastic. They had called an emergency session. The topic was simple: Earth was too much trouble. The planet should be sterilized from orbit, all humans exterminated, and the problem solved permanently. The vote would happen in 72 hours. Earth's hidden factories could not produce enough weapons in time. Earth's resistance forces could not evacuate 11 billion people. If the Council's judgment fleet arrived, humanity would end. Admiral Wu Jin convened a meeting of Earth's resistance leaders. Ji-hoon came down from his mountain bases. Sujin arrived from the urban underground. Mi-young and Jae-won presented their findings. Captain Hee-jin, newly promoted to fleet admiral, explained what the remnants had shared about Council weaknesses. The room was silent for a long time after all the reports were finished. They were discussing the end of the world, and they had 3 days to prevent it. Ji-hoon spoke first. We cannot defend Earth from orbital bombardment. Our only option is to attack. Hit them everywhere at once. Make them too busy to send a judgment fleet. Sujin nodded. My networks extend across 67 worlds. We can coordinate slave revolts simultaneously. The Council will have to respond to dozens of crises. Mi-young held up a small device. This contains the signal that will free every implanted human. We broadcast it through Council communications. And suddenly, they have millions of angry slaves in their cities and facilities. Jae-won displayed his override code on the main screen. If someone can reach Vakara Prime and access the quantum lock node, Earth's full military comes back online. That includes 300 defense satellites with nuclear warheads. Fleet Admiral Hee-jin looked at the remnant ships in orbit above them. I can get to Vakara Prime. The remnants have dimensional jump technology. It is unstable and dangerous, but it can put us directly in orbit over the throne world. If we attack there while revolts happen everywhere else, the Council will fracture. Admiral Wu Jin studied the map showing Council territory. It was vast, encompassing a third of the known galaxy. On paper, this was not even a fight. We are about to start a war we cannot win through conventional means, Wu Jin said quietly. The only way we survive is if we fight like humans have always fought, when the odds were impossible. We cheat. We lie. We hit below the belt. We make them bleed for every inch until they decide that enslaving Earth costs more than it is worth. He stood up and activated the communications network that connected every resistance cell on Earth and beyond. This is Admiral Wu Jin to all human forces. In 72 hours, the Council will attempt to destroy our homeworld. We will not let that happen. We are activating Operation Iron Forge. Every cell, every fighter, every freed slave will strike simultaneously. The Council thinks they are safe in their ancient power. We are going to teach them what it means to make humanity angry. Across Earth, in the mountains and underground cities, in the ocean depths and hidden bases, humans received the message. They had been preparing for this. They had been learning to fight and building weapons and breaking their mental chains. Now, it was time to show the galaxy what humanity could do when their backs were against the wall. On 40 different worlds, enslaved humans heard the whispers through their networks. Something was coming. Freedom was coming. They just needed to be ready to fight when the moment arrived. In the Council chambers on Vakara Prime, the 12 elder species gathered to vote on Earth's destruction. They discussed it calmly, as one might discuss pest control. The human problem had become too large. Better to end it now before it grew worse. They did not know that Fleet Admiral Hee-jin's ships were already moving through dimensional space. They did not know that Ji-hoon's forces were preparing to attack every Council installation on Earth. They did not know that their implant system was about to fail on 40 worlds at once. The Council had ruled the galaxy for millennia through careful control and overwhelming force. They had never faced an enemy that refused to accept defeat. They had never encountered a species that got more dangerous the harder you hit them. The vote was scheduled for 72 hours from now. The war started in 71. Humanity did not wait for permission to fight back. The Third Galactic War began without warning and spread like fire across 300 star systems. At exactly 0 hour, coordinated by smuggled quantum timers, humanity struck everywhere at once. On Earth, Ji-hoon led ground forces against the Council occupation centers. They did not fight fair. They did not announce their attacks. They struck from sewers and rooftops, using bombs hidden in supply crates and poison in water systems. HFY war priests who had never known defeat found themselves hunted by human soldiers who disappeared into cities they knew better than any invader could. In orbit, the hidden defense satellites came back online. Jaewon's override code had worked. The quantum locks released their hold on human weapons. Nuclear missiles launched toward Council ships that thought they were safe. Energy weapons that had been dark for 18 months suddenly blazed to life. The blockade fleet scattered, taking losses they did not expect. Across 40 slave worlds, Myung's broadcast activated. Every implanted human heard the signal. It was not words or music. It was a frequency that shattered the control programming like glass. On mining colonies, in factory complexes, across agricultural stations, millions of humans suddenly woke from their enforced calm. They remembered their anger. The Talux engineers on mining colony Epsilon 9 barely had time to realize something was wrong before their human workers turned on them. Tools became weapons. Service tunnels became ambush points. The colony fell in 4 hours. The Talux fled in escape pods, broadcasting desperate calls for help. Similar scenes played out everywhere. The Breshik agricultural world of Harvest 3 burned as humans set fire to the grain silos and stormed the overseer compounds. The HFY Forge world Metalis Prime went dark when human technicians sabotaged the power grid. Chaos spread through Council territory like a disease. Fleet Admiral Heijin emerged from Dimensional Jump directly above HFY Prime. The jump was rough. 2 of her ships did not survive the transition, torn apart by spatial distortions. But the remaining vessels appeared exactly where they needed to be, inside the defensive perimeter, close enough to strike at the planet below. The Council's home fleet was scattered across the galaxy, responding to dozens of simultaneous attacks. Only token forces remained to defend the throne world. They were still formidable, but they were unprepared. No enemy had appeared in Vakara's orbit for 3,000 years. Their complacency became their death. Heijin's ships carried the weapons designed from remnant knowledge. Railguns accelerated metal slugs to relativistic speeds. They punched through energy shields like they were paper. Kinetic missiles struck from angles the Council defense networks were not designed to cover. Electromagnetic pulse bombs detonated in the upper atmosphere, frying quantum communication arrays. The battle was brutal and fast. Heijin lost 12 ships in the first hour, but she crippled the orbital defenses. Her ground forces launched in drop pods, screaming through the atmosphere toward the Council chambers. Ji-hoon was with them. He had volunteered to lead the assault team that would reach the quantum lock node. On the ground, the HFY capital was in chaos. Alarms wailed. Citizens fled into shelters. The Council members themselves were evacuating to secret bunkers, scattering across the planet and beyond. But Ji-hoon's team was not interested in chasing them yet. First, they needed to reach the chamber, where humanity had been betrayed. The fighting through the palace was fierce. HFY guards fought with the desperation of defenders protecting sacred ground. Ji-hoon's soldiers fought with the fury of people who remembered being enslaved. Room by room, corridor by corridor, they advanced. Blood stained the elegant floors. The beautiful murals were scarred by weapons fire. Ji-hoon reached the Council chamber, where Ambassador Dongwon had stood 18 months ago. The room was empty now, abandoned by the fleeing Council members. Below the chamber, hidden under layers of security, was the quantum lock control node. Jaewon's codes opened the sealed doors. Ji-hoon descended into the technical levels with a team of engineers. The node was a sphere of crystalline technology, pulsing with energy that made the air taste like metal. The engineers worked quickly, translating Jaewon's instructions into commands the alien system could understand. It took 17 minutes, Outside, they could hear fighting as Vakari forces tried to retake the chamber. The command was input. The quantum locks across the galaxy released simultaneously. On Earth, Admiral Wu Jin felt the exact moment when his full arsenal became available again. Defense grids activated. Warships that had been disabled for 18 months roared back to life. Weapons, platforms hidden on the Moon and Mars came online. The war shifted in an instant. Humanity was no longer fighting with improvised weapons and desperate tactics. They had their technology back. And they were very, very angry. Sujin's intelligence network tracked the fleeing council members. 12 species, each leader heading to a different sanctuary. The Vakari elder fled to a fortress moon. The Telux administrator hid in a deep space station. The Breshik controller went to ground on their agricultural homeworld. They thought they could wait out the storm in safety. They were wrong. Sujin shared the locations with Admiral Wu Jin. He made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The Council had tried to exterminate humanity. They had enslaved billions. They had planned genocide. Humanity's response would be equally absolute. Myung had developed something terrible during the months of preparation. She called them quantum resonance weapons. They were based on remnant technology, refined through her understanding of biology. Each bomb was designed to target specific genetic markers. When detonated, the quantum resonance would affect only beings with those genetic patterns. Nothing else would be harmed. It was genocide in a box. Precise, complete, horrifying. The first time Admiral Wu Jin saw the designs, he had refused. This was too much. This made humanity into the monsters. But then the Council destroyed Titan, Saturn's largest moon, using reality-shaping weapons that simply erased it from existence. 12,000 humans, stationed there, died instantly as the moon stopped existing. The Council demonstrated that they would destroy anything to win. They would erase worlds. They would delete populations from reality itself. Wu Jin looked at his options and realized there were none. Humanity could not match the Council in conventional warfare. They could not defend against weapons that erased moons. If they wanted to survive, they had to do something the Council would never recover from. He authorized the quantum resonance weapons. Mi Young felt sick as she programmed the genetic markers for each Council species. This was not what she became a scientist to do. But she did it anyway because the alternative was extinction. Fleet Admiral Heejin loaded the weapons onto her fastest ships. The remnants had given her one more gift: dimensional navigation that allowed precise jumps to any coordinates. She could put ships directly over the Council leaders' hideouts. There would be no warning, no chance to flee, no final speeches. The operation was called Judgment. Humanity would render the same verdict the Council had planned for Earth. The strike teams launched from Vakara Prime, jumping through dimensional space to 12 different locations. The Council leaders were tracked, targeted, and marked for death. Ji-hoon stood in the empty Council chamber and thought about what was about to happen. 4 trillion beings across 12 species. That was the estimate. 4 trillion Council members spread across their homeworlds and colonies. The quantum resonance weapons would kill all of them simultaneously. Children would die. Families would end. Entire civilizations would cease to exist. The Council leaders had committed terrible crimes, but not every member of their species was guilty. There were innocent beings about to pay for their leaders' decisions. We could still stop this. One of Ji-hoon's officers said quietly, "We have won. They are beaten. We could show mercy." Ji-hoon looked at the seats where the 12 Council members had sat when they betrayed humanity. He thought about the humans who died on Titan. He thought about the 11 billion people on Earth who would have been exterminated if the Council's vote had succeeded. He thought about mercy and justice and survival. "The order stands," he said. "We do this, or they do it to us eventually. There is no middle ground anymore." The quantum resonance weapons detonated across 12 homeworlds in perfect synchronization. The effect was invisible at first, No explosions, no fire, no destruction of buildings. People simply stopped. Council members froze in place, their genetic patterns disrupted at the quantum level. Then, they fell. All of them. Everywhere. On Vakara, silver-skinned forms collapsed in streets and homes. On Tulux Prime, engineers fell at their workstations. On Breshik, farmers dropped in their fields. Across the galaxy, 4 trillion beings died in the same instant. Their cities remained. Their art survived. Their monuments stood untouched. But the council species themselves were gone, erased from existence as surely as Titan had been. The war did not end immediately. Council military forces still fought. Their slave soldiers from other species continued their programmed duties. But the heart was gone. Leadership had evaporated. Within a week, the remaining forces began to surrender. What else could they do? What else could they do? Humanity accepted surrenders and freed slave populations. They did not occupy conquered worlds or demand tribute. They simply ended the council's power and left. Other species could govern themselves. Humanity just wanted to be left alone. The galaxy reeled from the shock. The council had ruled for 10,000 years. Now they were gone. Deleted by a species they had tried to enslave. The lesson was clear and written in the ashes of 12 civilizations. Do not make Earth angry. The silence in the council chamber was absolute. Fleet Admiral Hagen stood at the center of the room where the 12 seats had once held the galaxy's most powerful leaders. Those seats were empty now. They would remain empty forever. The species that sat in them no longer existed. Hagen activated the broadcast system. Every planet, every station, every ship in the galaxy would receive this message. She took a breath and began to speak. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly as she gripped the podium. This is Fleet Admiral Hagen of the Earth Defense Force. I am broadcasting from the council chambers on Vakara Prime. The council no longer exists. The 12 species that enslaved 40 civilizations over thousands of years are gone. We did not want this war. We did not want to become executioners. But when faced with extinction, we chose survival. She paused, looking at the camera. Behind her eyes was exhaustion and something darker. The weight of 4 trillion deaths. Let this message be clear to every species in the galaxy. Earth will defend itself by any means necessary. We would prefer peace. We would prefer cooperation and trade and friendship. But if you try to enslave us, if you try to conquer us, if you threaten our survival, we will respond with absolute force. The council learned this lesson. Do not make us teach it again. The broadcast ended. In the silence that followed, Hagen sat down on the steps leading to the council seats. She put her face in her hands. Victory felt nothing like she thought it would. It felt like ashes and guilt and a hollowness that would never fill. On Earth, the celebrations were muted. Yes, they had won. Yes, they were free. But the cost was written in the casualty reports. 800 million humans had died during the occupation and war. Cities were damaged. Families were broken. And everyone knew what humanity had done to win. Ji-hoon returned to the mountains of Korea, where his resistance had started. The caves, where he had hidden with 15 soldiers, now held memorials for the 200 who had fought beside him. Only 63 had survived the war. He stood in front of the memorial wall, reading names and remembering faces. A young soldier approached him. She had fought in the final battles on Vakara Prime. Her uniform was clean now, but Ji-hoon could see the war in her eyes. All of them carried it. General, they are calling us heroes on Earth. There are parades and monuments. But I do not feel like a hero. I feel like a killer. Ji-hoon nodded slowly. That is because you understand what we did. Heroes in stories do not make choices like we made. They do not kill billions. But we did not live in a story. We lived in reality, where sometimes the only choice is between terrible and worse. Do you think it was worth it? The soldier asked. Jihoon looked out at the mountains where he had fought his first battles against the Vakari war priests. I think we are alive. I think Earth is free. I think the galaxy will never try to enslave humanity again. Whether that is worth 4 trillion lives, I cannot say. History will judge us. We just have to live with what we did. Mi-young sat in her laboratory, looking at the quantum resonance weapon schematics on her screen. She had the power to delete species from existence. She had used that power. The knowledge would never leave her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the simulations of how the weapons worked. She understood exactly how 4 trillion beings had died. A message appeared on her screen from Minho, the psychologist who had helped develop the implant resistance training. He had started a support program for soldiers and scientists dealing with what they had done during the war. Thousands were attending. Some could not sleep. Some could not stop crying. Some felt nothing at all anymore, and that scared them most. Mi-young attended the sessions. It helped to talk about it, though nothing could erase the guilt. She was working on medical technology now, trying to heal instead of destroy. It would never balance the scales, but she had to try. Jae-won and Soo-jin worked together on reconstruction. Cities needed to be rebuilt. Infrastructure had to be repaired. The quantum lock systems were being carefully dismantled and studied. Earth would keep the technology but redesign it so no one could ever use it against humanity again. Soo-jin's smuggling networks became legitimate businesses. Her knowledge of hidden routes and secret communications was valuable for rebuilding trade. She never spoke about the intelligence work she had done during the war, about the council members she had tracked to their hiding places. Some secrets were too heavy to share. Admiral Woojin stepped down from military command 6 months after the war ended. He was 57 years old and looked 70. The decisions he had made aged him in ways that went beyond numbers. He retired to a small house by the ocean and rarely gave interviews. When asked about authorizing the quantum resonance weapons, he would only say that he made the choice he thought would save humanity. Whether it was the right choice was not for him to decide. The galaxy reorganized itself slowly. The Council's former slave species were freed, but they did not celebrate. They had watched humanity destroy their oppressors and felt both gratitude and fear. Earth had liberated them. But Earth had also demonstrated the capacity for total annihilation. A new galactic assembly was proposed, this time on neutral ground, on a station built specifically for diplomacy. 60 species sent representatives. The rules were different now. No species could claim authority over another. No slavery, no forced labor, no conquest. Those who violated these rules would face consequences. And everyone knew what Earth was capable of. Ambassador Dongwon, freed from his cell on Vicara Prime, became Earth's representative to the new assembly. He had survived the occupation and witnessed humanity's response. He carried both experiences with him as he negotiated treaties and trade agreements. "We do not want to rule the galaxy," he told the assembly during the opening session. "We do not want tribute or territory. We want to be left alone to rebuild our world and live our lives. But make no mistake about our resolve. The Council thought they could enslave us because we were young and weak. They learned differently. Do not repeat their mistake." The assembly listened. Some species approached Earth with offers of alliance and trade. Others kept their distance, preferring to avoid any connection with the species that had committed the greatest act of genocide in galactic history. Humanity was respected, feared, and isolated all at once. The remnants disappeared back into dark space after the war ended. Before they left, their representative spoke with Fleet Admiral Heijin one last time. "You became what we were," the ancient machine said. "Warriors who destroyed civilizations to survive. The weight of that never leaves. We have carried it for 10,000 years. Now, you will carry it too." "Would you do it differently?" Heijin asked. "If you could go back, would you choose to die instead of fighting?" No, the remnant answered. Survival is worth the guilt. But some nights, I wonder if that is true. 30 years passed. Earth rebuilt. The population grew again. Children were born who never knew the occupation, who only learned about the war in history classes. The memorials stood in every city, listing names of the dead and warning future generations about the cost of freedom. Ji-hoon was an old man now, white-haired and walking with a cane. He stood before the new Galactic Assembly as a guest speaker, invited to talk about the war and its lessons. The assembly hall was full. Representatives from dozens of species wanted to hear from the general who had started the resistance in a mountain cave. I am not here to justify what we did, Ji-hoon said, his voice still strong despite his age. I cannot justify killing 4 trillion beings. I can only explain why we did it. The council gave us a choice. Submit to slavery or die. We chose neither. We chose to fight back, and we used every weapon we had. He paused, looking at the assembled representatives. Humanity did not want to become executioners. We were forced into that role. Every species here should remember that. If you threaten someone's existence, you should not be surprised when they respond with total force. A representative from one of the former council slave species stood. Do you have regrets about what you did? Ji-hoon was silent for a long moment. Every day, every single day, I think about the children who died because of weapons I helped deploy. But I also think about the human children who would have died if we had not fought back. I made a choice between terrible options. I chose to save my people. Whether that was right or wrong, history will decide. I just have to live with it. After the speech, reporters swarmed him with questions. Ji-hoon answered some and ignored others. As he was leaving, a young alien approached him. She was from one of the freed slave species. Her people liberated when the council fell. My grandmother was in a labor camp, she said quietly. She was freed when your people attacked. She says you saved her life. But she also says she cannot forget what you did to win. She does not know if she should thank you or fear you. Ji-hoon looked at the young alien. Tell your grandmother she should do both. That is honest. We saved your people, but we also showed the galaxy what we are capable of. Both things are true. We are capable of great kindness and terrible violence. Which one you see depends on how you treat us. The assembly continued for another week. Treaties were signed. Trade agreements were established. Earth became a major power in galactic politics. Not through conquest, but through demonstrated strength. No one wanted to anger the species that had erased the council, but there were signs of hope too. Cultural exchanges began. Alien students came to study on Earth. Human artists collaborated with alien musicians. Scientists from different species worked together on research projects. Slowly, carefully, the galaxy was learning to trust humanity again. Fleet Admiral Haejin, now retired and living on Mars, watched the news about the assembly. She saw the treaties and the cooperation and the careful steps toward peace. It made her smile. Though the smile was sad, she kept the quantum resonance weapon designs in a secure vault. They were the only copies that existed. Humanity had agreed to never build them again, but the knowledge remained. Just in case someone else needed to learn the lesson the council had learned. Some nights, Haejin dreamed about the moment when the weapons activated. She saw 4 trillion beings fall simultaneously across 12 worlds. She woke up in cold sweat, knowing she had given the order, knowing she would give it again if she had to. Survival demanded terrible choices. Earth continued. Humanity healed, though the scars remained. The war was history now, but it shaped everything that came after. Every treaty included protections against slavery. Every trade agreement acknowledged Earth's sovereignty. The galaxy had learned that humanity would not be controlled. Ji-hoon died at age 89, surrounded by his family. His funeral was attended by thousands. Representatives from 50 species came to pay their respects. They did not all agree on whether he was a hero or a war criminal, but they all agreed that he had changed the galaxy forever. The memorial they built for him was simple: a stone monument in the Korean mountains where he had first fought back against the HFY war priests. The inscription read, "He chose survival when the galaxy chose oppression. The cost was terrible. The alternative was extinction." That was humanity's legacy. The species that would pay any price to remain free. The species that the galaxy learned to respect and fear in equal measure. The species that proved that even the weakest can become the strongest if you push them hard enough. And across the galaxy, on every world and station, the lesson was remembered. Do not enslave Earth. Do not threaten humanity's existence. Because they will fight back, and they will win, no matter what it costs.